We are live. All right, everybody, what is going on? I know this is a last minute little breaking news, right,
Muppet
Perrin?
News Flash.
Breaking news, Muppet News Flash. It's sad.
With MailChimp's
And,
customer journey
and
smarts.
I don't want to make light of the situation. And it's not a show to make light of the situation. It's basically, so me and Perrin are talking, and what we're finding is has become a very polarized debate, right? We're not going to give our opinions about this because we want to remain neutral on this. I think it's important to hear what the fans have to say. We'll look at the Facebook feed, we'll look at the Twitter feed, we'll look at the YouTube feed, and we'll read the questions. Perrin, what do you want? You want to start
Maybe
things
we'll
off?
respond to some of your comments. So about 60 to 90 minutes ago, Dave Mustaine and Megadeth released the following. We are informing our fans that David Ellefson is no longer playing with Megadeth and that we are officially parting ways with him. We do not take this decision lightly. While we do not know every detail of what occurred, with an already strained relationship, what has already been revealed now is enough to make working together impossible moving forward. We look forward to seeing our fans on the road this summer, and we cannot wait to share our brand new music with the world. It is almost complete. Dave Mustaine, Megadeth, May 24th, 2021. So short and to the point.
Yeah. And again, to emphasize to everybody that we're not here to tell the world what we think about the situation because there's not enough information. And I could tell everybody this. I've met Dave Ellefson many times. He was always nice to me. So you can only judge people, right, on how they treat you. So all I can say is always a nice person, always made time for me, done a lot of interviews with the guy. I spoke to Dave Mustaine, another really nice guy, very smart, very intellectual. So they've always treated people on the show here very well and nice, both parties. So we're not going to get into what we think. We're going to read out what you think because this has become a very polarized parting of ways.
Yeah.
So, Perrin?
And when Jimmy says polarized, I mean, just looking at our comments on Facebook, or if you look around at a lot of the other, popular metal sites, people are commenting. And the comments really range from, well, no duh, I knew that was coming, to how can Dave Mustaine be so disloyal to his brother? Now Megadeth is nothing more than a solo act or a cover band of themselves. So those are really the two extremes and everything in between. And, a couple things, if you look at the statement, first of all, it does not say Dave Ellefson was fired. It says they're parting ways. So that would lend one to believe that there was discussion, negotiation, an arrangement made that left both parties in such a way that, they could walk away, hopefully with not this becoming a whole legal mess, because of course we've had legal messes between the two Daves in the past. And then I guess the other thing that a lot of people are speculating about is the fact that Dave Mustaine put in the statement with an already strained relationship. And that could mean their discussions about what recently transpired. That could mean, musical differences. That could just mean, and we all know this. And guys, it's like not every band are best friends. Sometimes they start off that way and it kind of disintegrates. Sometimes they were never to begin with and they kind of, lived lives on tour, but then lived separate lives not on tour. So, there's a few little things in there that people are talking about. And, look, I guess when we do our Sunday panel shows, I'm the business guy. So
I'm the goofball.
From a business standpoint, what's the old saying? I think it's in the Jerry Maguire movie, right? This isn't show friends, it's show business. And it is possible to be friends with a person, but to no longer want to be in business with them, or to think that it's just no longer in your best interests to be in business with them. Dave Ellefson has not been charged of a crime. as far as we know. There's no court case pending. There's just the court of public opinion. And then on top of that, there's whatever was brewing, whatever the already strained relationship Dave Mustaine was referring to. And that was enough for the two parties to say, yeah, it's probably better we don't do business together anymore. And I'm sure we'll hear more about this, in the coming days and weeks.
Yeah. And you know what? And we again, we have to start with this with the pretense that we don't know what's going on. We don't know what's happening behind the scenes. We don't know what has happened and what hasn't happened. We just know what we see on the news. And we're not here to sensationalize it or to insult anyone or to hurt someone.
We're not debating it in any way.
We're not here to debate this. We're not to debate what he did was right or wrong. We're here to just read your reaction to it's big. I mean, Megadeth is like, you're talking about Metallica, Iron Maiden. You're talking about one of the biggest bands.
They're one of the 10 biggest heavy metal bands in the world, I would say. I would say Megadeth are probably one of the 10 biggest metal bands in the world.
Yeah.
At the moment, maybe top 20 of all time. Again, these lists are all subjective, but they're important. They've produced very important music over the years, very important albums, and they're very important figures. So when a key member is no longer in the band, people have feelings about it. And like I said, if you read some of the comments that we've seen from various parts of the internet, some people are indignant that Dave Ellefson is no longer in the band. And some people are like, well, it's always kind of been a Dave Mustaine solo project anyway, under the moniker Megadeth, or at least it has been for a long time.
Yeah.
So I guess your opinion might be influenced by how you feel about Dave Ellefson's relative importance to the music that Megadeth produces and their live show.
Yeah, for me, to me, Dave have always been, Megadeth.
Butter and jelly.
They've always been Megadeth, and it's sad for me, if it was the right decision or the wrong decision, it doesn't matter. It's still sad. And I think that's why the internet's on fire right now, because it hurts fans regardless of whatever happened, behind the scenes. So I'm going to read some comments, and you could read some comments. So here, and we'll go with the YouTube comments first, because these guys have priority, because we're on YouTube, right? Some dude says, I can see both sides of this from Ellefson and the bands, but dude, people in general need to be way more self-aware than they are currently. You're a public figure in a high-profile band. That's a fair enough statement. He is in a high-profile band, and you should have been very careful, right? You want to read one?
Yeah. So I'll read our friend Brett's on the Facebook page. So the already strained relationship, in quotation marks, speaks volumes. I hope he's innocent. I hope she wasn't underage. But if she was, throw the book at him. Again, you're all entitled to your opinion. If not, I hope he doesn't lose too much. And then, we talk a little bit about who, people are already speculating who might replace. So, Brett throws.
We won't go there yet. We won't go there yet.
We'll talk about that after. But yeah, so, this is a little bit of the strained relationship speaks volumes. Hope the person was of age. But here's the important thing. Again, David Ellefson has not been accused of a crime. He's not been arrested. So let's assume she was of age. I guess the feeling in the Megadeth camp is still that, a lot of people have seen that footage, and it's perhaps embarrassing to the brand/band. And maybe that's part of the reason that the management or Dave Mustaine feels like it's best if the person who tarnished the image of the brand is no longer there. And again, pure speculation,
Yeah, so, let's put that in parentheses. Speculation, right? We don't want to speculate on things we don't know. Dillinger Fan 1 says, totally support Mustaine's decision. Austin Barr says, for the question is, who is going to replace Dave? Well, we're not going to get there yet, but he's saying James Newsted. The body isn't, it's still warm. Let's not go there just yet, right? Maybe we could talk about this at the end of this conversation. But John Fisher saying very sad on YouTube. Lucha saying, seriously, I believe there's much more to the story than we know. And Lucha, I would agree with you. There is probably a lot more to the story than we know. And that's why we could speculate, but let's not over speculate, and let's not bring the hammer down,
You want polarizing? I got a polarizing one.
Go ahead.
So we got our friend Anna, right? Anna, I believe, is in France. Anna from the Rock Dance Theater, who often corresponds with us. Total fucking bullshit in capital letters. Megadeth is nothing without David Ellefson. Good luck, Dave Mustaine, on your solo cover band. Gross. We talked about polarizing statements. So there is a very strong statement in support of Dave Ellefson. Obviously, his contributions or relative importance to Megadeth.
Yeah.
And, again, the take that I'm seeing for people who are really supporting David Ellefson have this belief that, a band are supposed to be a band of brothers, and you don't, cut loose your brother in his time of need.
Well, let's go on. I saw another comment by Deanna, who comments a lot, and I'm going to read her statement because now we're going on the other side of the spectrum, right? And I can't find it now. Oh, here it is. Here we go. And you know what? We're looking at all sides of the spectrum. We're not sort of saying one side is right and one side is wrong. We're just reading what the fans are saying, right? And it's very, very polarizing because at the heart of it, we're all Megadeth fans, and we don't like to see this craziness. Deanna saying, fantastic. And along with him, all the, I think she's right, insane fanboys are canceled by a legitimate metal band. Of course, they could still express their love for this guy in private. Kudos to Dave Mustaine for giving an example and making the metal scene safe. And then that's afterwards you have like Anna's total fucking bullshit comment.
Right. And, and I think it's, and here are two female fans and female followers of ours. And I think it's very important. I'm glad we're kind of, providing a female perspective here as well. So you have Anna and Diana on different sides of the spectrum. One kind of applauding this Dave Mustaine for his strength of character in doing this, and the other kind of vilifying Dave Mustaine for cutting loose his brother, if that is what happened.
Yeah. So Dennis Perrin says, and this is an interesting statement which a lot of fans have been also expressing, far worse men have done far worse things in the name of metal. He didn't burn down a church. Not sure it's a fireable offense. Classless, yes. So again, based on the information that we know, that is a statement that he's making. And we're not here, again, I just want to emphasize, we're not here to trash anyone's side. We're here just to read what the fans think because this is a hot topic, because the fans love Megadeth. And they want to express themselves. And this is the vehicle or the conduit to express themselves.
And Jimmy, let me say, in a business context,
yeah,
everything is a fireable offense. So I'm going to assume it's common knowledge that when Dave Ellefson returned to the band, he was no longer a partner in Megadeth. He was an employee of Megadeth, much like Dirk is on drums and much like Kiko is on guitar. Perhaps he got a better wage because he was a classic member. Nobody really knows that. But he was not a partner in a band. He was an employee. So when you're an employee, you could be fired from anything from playing too many bad notes to your personality to actions that you did or didn't take. So really, and we're all subject to this in our regular everyday life.
But also,
right?
There's also, an employee can also, fight the dismissal.
Absolutely. And
so,
that
it goes both ways, right? So that's
right.
a whole...
Look, a person could be fired for cause. A person could be fired without cause. And depending how the company is letting the person go, maybe there's a check that changes hands and maybe there isn't. And maybe there's a lawsuit that ensues or a labor board that steps in. And again, this is metal. This isn't.
We can't go into speculation too much because at the end of the day, we don't know, right? Yeah. And what we don't know, But I agree with you that companies, if they let somebody go, they better let somebody go with a lot of sort of evidence, or else that employee will seek some sort of financial compensation, unless there was an agreement in the back rooms.
Or that compensation could have been offered up front, and the individual could look at it and say, Yeah, you know what? Maybe better to take the short route and just end this now than take the long road. Because, the thing is, when you take the long road, often the only ones who win are the lawyers. So,
Yeah.
so
But here's the point now here. Now, Chick Eastwater says, "Who wants that publicity when they are touring?" Now, this is probably the reason why we're actually doing the show today. If it was sort of like one-sided and everybody was saying good on Dave or bad on David,
yeah, there's nothing to talk about.
but no. The point is this actually going to hurt Megadeth? Or is this going to actually... Sometimes you think you're doing something because you think it's going to help the band, but this might actually deter people. And I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't want that. I want the band to be successful. And I don't want any bad things, people doing bad stuff morally. I like people to be morally right. But at the end of the day, will this hurt the band or help the band?
Yeah.
Whatever happened? Here's another good point. Oscar is saying, what happens with all the endorsers? That's another good question.
I would say, Dave Ellefson, as an example, probably has an individual contract with the companies he endorses. And obviously, the attraction for those companies is to be able to say Dave Ellefson of Megadeth, although Dave Ellefson, even outside of Megadeth, is a well-known name. So I would say, any company, and forget Dave Ellefson, we've seen this with professional athletes, we've seen this sort of thing, with many different kinds of people, with celebrities, Hollywood actors. If you have personal service contracts or endorsement contracts with various companies, they will decide to support you, or if they think the negative publicity that surrounds you is no longer good for their brand, then they will let you go. So, we've seen this. So, look
at this. Here's another one. And I'm going to read all comments from all the spectrum because I'm not going to play one side here, right? We're going to remain neutral. EJ says, how would you feel if your daughter was groomed by Ellefson? Okay. And I'm just reading that statement because it's one of many statements that are on the internet. But then there's another statement that says, John Katsuda says, Megadeth is my favorite band out of the big four. I really hate all of this. This current lineup, in my opinion, was the best one since the Rust in Peace. Then there's other people who don't want to know about people's personal lives, right? It's kind of like, I just want to know about music. Yeah. And that's all I really want to know about. Please stop with all this.
Jimmy, you and I discussed it the day it happened. And we said, look, we don't want to talk about this.
And I still don't want to talk about this.
Yeah.
Not that it's not important. It's important in life in general. But I'm just saying that we're talking about music and we try to stick to music. And in this special case, I think just to sort of give the voice to all the fans and the hurt from the fans, the people on both sides of the spectrum.
Yeah. I got a good comment here on Facebook. So we have Mariano Buses. Effin gossip. Ellefson pays the ultimate price. He made a terrible mistake, and Mustaine made another mistake. Where's the friendship? Maybe they know he has some sexual addiction. Very sad moment. So I think there's an implication there. Does a friend have a responsibility to help a friend? Let's say, Dave Ellefson had an alcohol addiction. Let's face it. Guys at Megadeth over the years have had drug and alcohol addictions, and they weren't necessarily kicked out of the band for them. Hell, the leader of the band had some very important addictions, and the career was put on hold and then got going again. So I guess it's, Mariano is kind of just implying, again, should this be more about friendship, and should there be some sensitivity to maybe help the guy and not cut him loose? But that's where, again, we don't know what
we don't know. For all we know, and again, I'm going to emphasize that met both Daves and nice people, but we don't know what's happening in their personal life, and should we be the ones judging them on what they do in their personal life? Okay, Hector on Twitter saying this kind of behavior always been unacceptable, and nowadays even more. They're about to restart the live concert circuit, and anyone knows that keeping him would be a PR nightmare. And always the band most of the time been Dave Mustaine means, with the current hired guns, they will be okay. Well, there's somebody who's saying, you know what? Some negative PR we're cutting him loose because we don't want to lose. It's tough to make it today, right? It's tough to sustain yourself financially, so we're just cutting him loose. I asked the people out there, is that rock and roll? I mean, a lot of people are saying, it's not rock and roll, right?
Yeah. So
where's the edge?
We just got a comment about
right?
political correctness. All right. So, one of your brethren, I would say, Mario Sakrivos,
Paisan.
a heavy metal band, one of the biggest at that, giving in to political correctness. That's what it feels like to me. So, I guess in metal, we have a feeling that metal has always been about non-conformity. We don't conform. We're different. We're outsiders from society. So Marios doesn't feel so great that, it's on the surface, it might seem like Megadeth has caved in to being politically correct.
Here's a good one. And here's a kind of question I've been sort of like talking to people about. And if this was Motley Crue, would anybody even blink? Right? If
well, a member of Motley Crue,
right?
A member of Motley Crue killed somebody, right?
That's right.
Found guilty,
and no one seems to care
of killing somebody.
But they're packing up the arenas and
and then after paying a hefty fine and doing a very small amount of jail time, was back on the road with people celebrating Vince is back, woo! So and it's interesting that you bring it up, Jimmy, because you're right. Like, do we have a double standard, or is it just that was in 1984 and now we're in 2021?
That's a good point. Or is it about expectations? Now, one guy is like Tommy. Let's take Tommy Lee as an example. You would think he would do that all the time, right? That he probably does that, and he's got some videos out, right? You know what I mean? That's his thing, right? To be the bad boy, and we expect it, so we're okay with it. Whereas David Ellefson, we have a higher expectation.
He projects.
Of him.
He's a pastor.
He speaks eloquently, and it's maybe it's the expectation that is what's sort of driving that inconsistency. Melissa Nee says, seems to me this is and this is from a woman perspective, which is important. Melissa, seems to me this is a matter for him and his wife, as long as she was overage and consented. That's a good point too. I mean, this is a personal matter. It's
both. And again, Jimmy, you and I talking offline before. Again, if you work as a salesman for a company, and all of a sudden something that you've done in your life is known, and people might not want to buy from you anymore, does the company then have a difficult decision because they like you, they even love you, they've known you for years, but at the end of the day, if their job is to sell whatever, and they think you're going to have a hard time doing that because everyone knows about this thing, then what? And that, so yes, for sure, on a personal level, it's between Dave's choices are between Dave and his wife and his family, but everything does impact everything else. The reality is we live in this, social media world where in the past, if you did something like this, unless you killed somebody, no one knew about it. And now you do something like this, and everybody knows about it. And
you factor in the cancel culture, people, which makes it even more larger, right?
But I mean, cancel culture. I always take a little bit exception to the term, because I just feel cancel culture is really another word for accountability. At the end of the day, in life, we're all accountable for our actions. So, every action has a reaction. So if I do something, a lot of people might like it and continue to support me, but a lot of other people might not like it and decide not to support me. And I guess whichever side is bigger is almost going to determine my fate. And that's kind of just the way it is.
All right. Musik says, I'm honestly shocked. Never thought this would be the outcome. And there's a lot of people like that too. And I was kind of hoping this wouldn't be the outcome. And again, I get the morality of it all. I'm not agreeing or disagreeing with it. But we all hope, deep inside, that the band wouldn't suffer because of it. They have a new album they're working on, everybody's
tour dates just announced.
So it's a blow. I guess the question for the people out there is, are you anxious to see Megadeth without David Ellefson there? That.
Well, I'm a ticket holder. So I can answer that question for you because I'm a
Well, I haven't bought a ticket yet.
Yeah, well, I bought a ticket a long time ago.
So I'm sitting on the fence here.
And I decided to hold on to that ticket. And then when they announced the new date, which they just did a couple of weeks ago, talked it over with my other half. Yeah, we want to go to this show. So I decided to go. And I will say, this doesn't change my mind. And again, this kind of leads us to the thing, like, is Megadeth Dave Mustaine, or is Megadeth Megadeth? And for me, of course, I enjoy Dave Ellefson in Megadeth, but I've seen so many versions of Megadeth. Like I've seen them with James McDonough on bass. I've seen them with James Lomenzo on bass. I won't not go to the show because of this. I'll still go to the show. I wish it was Dave Ellefson, the originator of that amazing Peace Sells riff, playing it. But if it's somebody else, that's okay too. It's still a good night out. So it doesn't change my decision.
Go to Twitter.
Here's an interesting one from Todd.
Let me flip a Twitter one here. Metal Katie says, "Wow, what a tragedy." Officer Friendly says, "Wonder what an already strained relationship really means." And that was, I wouldn't say cryptic, but I would say that was, I'm assuming because of the whole battle with the name and, sort of mending the fences, coming back,
there was a bitter lawsuit, guys. I mean, that's the thing, right? Dave Ellefson came back to the band after a bitter lawsuit between the two Daves. And, it's hard to know sometimes, did the lawsuit get settled and they shook hands and became friends again? Or was part of the settlement that Dave had to be back in the band? And guys, doing this with the Metal Voice and other kind of, freelance journalism stuff I've done, it's one thing I learned over the years is, again, bands are not always best friends. I can name you very, very well-known bands who they hug on stage, they interact on stage as if, they babysit each other's kids, but they travel on separate buses, stay in separate hotels, and really only see each other when they get on stage. And I have no idea if that's the way it is in Megadeth or not, but I can just tell you there are some very big bands that see each other at soundcheck, see each other, perhaps they pass each other in catering, and they see each other on stage. But when it comes to travel, one likes to go to this kind of restaurant, one likes to go to that kind of restaurant. One likes to stay in the hotel on off days and read, and the other one likes to go hiking or sing around the city or play golf. So, like, it's not the, traveling from city to city, arm in arm, like pirates and Vikings. It's
now
really
you just shut down my dreams there, Perrin. Thank you very much. I thought they were like pirates and Vikings.
And we all thought that when we were younger. We all thought that when we were younger, but it's
and they probably thought like that too when they're younger. Then they got old and bitter.
Yeah, so, and that's the way it is, right?
That's the way it is. All right, here we go. Michael Green on Twitter. Then internet, social media, people wanting to profit are ruthless and don't care about wrecking people's lives. Should he have done it? No. But having said that, Dave Mustaine has to protect the band and the brand. There's a lot of truth to that. That's kind of why I was very reluctant to sort of post. And I mean, okay, I don't want to contradict myself because we're doing this now, but it's kind of like it's ended now. You know what I mean? There's a conclusion to this, and that's kind of what this is about. I didn't want to feed the fire of and judge whoever, Megadeth or Ellefson. I don't find it's appropriate to talk about people's lives, privately. I don't think that's our place. And I get it, some people do, and that's fine, but I just don't feel like what we do at the Metal Voice Everybody is to judge people in their personal lives, if they're right or wrong, right? It's not us to decide. And that's kind of why I keep the topic to the fans and what they think and how they feel.
Yeah. Jimmy, I will say, if it was going to happen, better that it happens soon than happens in 6 months, because it's never a good feeling for fans or for the people involved to be left kind of twisting in the wind, not sure what's going to happen. Yeah. So for better or worse, in business, they kind of teach you right, wrong, or indifferent, gather your facts, make a decision quickly. Maybe it's the right decision. Maybe time will reveal that it was the wrong decision, but you got to kind of, the fairest thing to do for everybody is to make a decision fairly quickly and not let it linger for a month, for 6 months, Like, I'd much rather this happen now than everyone bought their tickets. The shows are a week away from happening. And then it's, oh,
Yeah.
by the way, David Ellefson isn't going to be on tour. And then a lot of people who bought tickets feel duped because they didn't know what they were getting. I remember there was a Motley Crue greatest hits tour on one of their many reunions back in the early 2000s. And, you know, on the greatest hits album, it was the four of them, Tommy Lee. And then on the day tickets were going on sale, they announced Tommy Lee wouldn't be doing the tour and Samantha Maloney from Hole would be doing the tour. And a lot of people were pissed. And back then, there wasn't an option to get a refund. Like, you know, you bought a Motley Crue ticket, you didn't buy a ticket to see Tommy Lee. So, you know, you're kind of stiffed. So at least here, anyone who's buying a ticket to see Megadeth this summer or fall knows.
And I think, you know what, I agree with you. It's good that there's a conclusion to this, because maybe if there's a conclusion to this, it could all be sort of put aside and let whoever needs to heal, and whoever needs to be sort of whatever, put the pasture and whatever. Just get it over with. So Sirion saying David shouldn't have been fired for something they did in their personal lives unless they killed someone or something big like that. I mean, look, Tommy Lee in his personal life basically, you know, killed someone and maimed a whole bunch of other people. Not Tommy Lee, Vince Neil, sorry. Vince Neil, excuse me. You know, and he got away with it. You know, he did some community work, maybe spent a little time in jail, and it was okay. The fans, you know, turn around and they go see more shows by Motley Crue, right? Because it's expected of them.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, here, you know, with that one, it was a weird thing where in order for Vince Neil to come up with the money needed to pay the families of the victims, because not only did Razzle die in that crash, but two relatively young people were left with very bad injuries. Yeah. And on top of serving jail time, Vince Neil had to pay restitution to those people. But in order to be able to pay restitution, he had to work. So it was found that instead of letting Vince Neil rot in jail, let him go back to work. So at least these people will get the money they need to look after their unfortunately paralyzed loved ones for the rest of their lives. And it's a horrible situation, horrible, you know, far worse than this, quite frankly. So, I mean, it's interesting you brought it up before, because, you know, Vince Neil killed his friend, manslaughter, not on purpose, but unintentionally killed his friend, and devastated the lives of two other families, and was out after 30 days after writing some checks, you know. So Dave, no matter what, Dave Ellefson did not kill anybody. You know, he might have done something immoral. You could argue he did something really stupid by, you know, letting himself be filmed and not really controlling where it goes. And in this day of social media, if it's here, it's everywhere, you know.
You know what, Matthew Lee, who's been around forever, is a friend and all, and Rolling Stones never shied away from their underage sex. This was their 1994 Voodoo Lounge T-shirt, and he has got a T-shirt and underage. You know what? Here's my answer to that. It's not. That's a moral and legal question that we shouldn't sort of like jump into. Different times. It's just different times, and things have sort of evolved, we shall say, right? And that's all I'm going to say to that. Like, I mean, we're not ones to, right?
For some bands, the sex, drugs, and rock and roll image is a draw and it will help you sell more. But maybe for other bands, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, maybe as you get older, is maybe not the image you want to portray. So I get, I mean, and that sounds weird to say.
Different times, my cousin got married at 17, you know what I mean? Like, but it was a long time ago, and different rules start coming in, and things change, and, more rights of people and the protection of children, and things evolve, things evolve. You can't go back to the, 1200s and say, well, why didn't, women weren't allowed to vote, and
look, the owner of Megadeth,
whatever, right?
Look, let's not kid ourselves. Dave Mustaine is now a fairly religious person himself. Yeah. And, sometimes if you offend the boss, if you offend his morals, he might not want you around. And again, I just bring you back to a regular company. If you work for a regular company and the boss feels very strongly about any issue, abortion, same-sex marriage rights, whatever the issue is, if the boss feels strongly about something and you blatantly and publicly come out with something opposite that or that offends the boss, there's a reckoning to be had sometimes, and you'd like to think in a perfect world, people are tolerant and I could have my opinion and you could have your opinion. But, sometimes the boss is like, look, I just can't look at you across the table at a meeting every day. And I don't know, maybe that's the case here. Maybe Dave Mustaine, again, he talks about the previous strained relationship. Maybe this was the straw that broke the camel's back for him, So,
well, maybe there's other stuff that we're going on that we're not even, we're not privy to everything.
Maybe
so
musical direction. Like maybe Dave Ellefson is coming up with something.
And this is a comment here from James McLean, who's saying, and a lot of people are saying this, it's sort of like a brothership or sistership or brothership, and so not cool. Support your bandmate. A lot of people say, it's like, look, we're brothers here. Like we're bandmates. We've gone through thick and thin, and if we don't have friendship, what do we have in life, right?
But where's the line? The rain has to stop someplace, right? Where does the rain stop?
I'm just saying it's a fair point. It's a fair point to throw out there, right? Like life is not only about business, right? It's about supporting your friends, especially if something went wrong in your personal life, right?
Yeah, but what if they're not friends?
Right or wrong?
That's the point. Like the point is, and I think Dave is kind of alluding to that in the statement, like maybe they're not really friends, which is
maybe they're not. And we don't know that, so we can't, make that call, right? Violetta saying, if we're out there canceling people for sexual misconduct with other adults, then every last rock star on the planet would be out of a job. That's a good point too.
And I have a similar one here. Todd, this is standard operating procedure for Hollywood and nobody seems to care. So why act like it's a big deal now?
Then it becomes a selective thing. Are we being selective over one crowd over another, right? So many different angles. And again, we're not here to judge. I'm going to say this over and over again. Not here to judge. We're here to read your comments and how you feel, okay? Let me see. If this was 20 years ago, it would be different. Yes, it would be. Chick Eastwater says, if this was 20 years ago, it would be different. Yes, it would be different. But if you go back 100 years ago, a lot of things were different too. If you go back 200 years ago, a lot of things were different.
You might have been executed or something.
That's right. That's right. They've been stoned, you know what I mean? And not the good kind, the bad kind, right?
No trial, just it's like all done,
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we've become at a very protective of our children age. There's nothing wrong with that. We want to protect our children. We want to protect people who are, vulnerable. And yes, the girl did come out and say that, it was with her consent. We don't know the whole story, but just saying that we're in an age where we have more protection of our children, whereas 100 years ago they didn't, right?
So I guess the next question, Jimmy, and I'd be curious to get people's opinions on this, is Megadeth Dave Mustaine, or is Megadeth Dave Mustaine and Dave Ellefson, or is Megadeth Dave Mustaine, Dave Ellefson, and the guitar drum combo they have at the time? What is Megadeth?
Well, Megadeth, we don't know what Megadeth is because it's evolved so much over time, right?
Would you be offended
right?
if somebody said that Megadeth is Dave Mustaine and everything else is inconsequential? Does that offend you? So basically saying Kiko is...
Well, one thing's for sure. One thing's for sure, Perry. Let's just eliminate here. One thing for sure, Mustaine is Megadeth, right? That's one of the key ingredients.
And I agree with you. No Megadeth, no Mustaine, no Megadeth.
I mean, that we know. Now, then there's a better Megadeth and a sort of lighter Megadeth, right?
So you're saying that Dave Ellefson can't come out with Ellefson's Megadeth, like KK's Priest. We can't have Ellefson's Megadeth. That's not going to work.
You know what? I don't like if he doesn't own the trademark. And again, I don't know the ins and outs of this, but if he doesn't own the trademark, then I would see a very difficult, spot where he's in. You could say maybe the former bass player of Megadeth.
Ellefson's MD,
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like in here, Sirion saying like Lemmy was always Motorhead, right? Yeah, you take away Lemmy who sings and plays bass. I mean, there is no Motorhead, but I could see people thinking, maybe we should continue Motorhead,
Because because
Would
I
it be
feel
that far-fetched?
I tend to agree with you, and I'd say, but I would say, the original Megadeth with Chris Poland and Gar Samuelson,
Yeah.
that felt like a band.
Yeah.
And then that one album of Jeff Young and Chuck Beeler, that didn't feel so much like a band. But then when they got Marty Friedman and Nick Menza and they had some continuity there, that felt like a band. But I feel ever since Nick Menza and Marty Friedman left the band, I felt it was a project after that. You had Al Pitrelli and Jim DeGrasso, and then you had the hiatus, and then there's been a little bit of a revolving door with, James McDonough, James Lomenzo, the Drover brothers, the current lineup, Chris Broderick, right? There's been a lot of people through the band, particularly after the hiatus, which would make a person say, yeah, the one constant is Dave Mustaine. So
it seems to be more of a, like, if I was to look this from a demographic perspective, it seems to affect fathers with daughters, right? Because we want to protect our daughters. It seems to protect women who've been taken advantage of. They feel very strongly about this. Those are the people who are sort of like, look at this more seriously.
Look,
you know what I mean?
Jimmy, I have a daughter. I have a daughter. I have a 14-year-old daughter, right?
That's right. That's right.
So it kind of hits home to me a little bit that if if I came home and, but my daughter's 14, she's not 19, and we don't know. This girl says she was 19. At first it was reported 17.
You know what? That's why kind of like I don't want to go there because we don't know, right? We don't know. We don't know. The details, we don't know the details. And then a lot of people are, it's crazy. It's like, and you talked about this before. Who do we replace him with? Well, I mean, we just announced, like, the news was just announced.
But people, we're fans, right? Everyone's a fan. So
Jason Newsted should replace him. Like, well, guys, this hasn't.
But I will say, on Blabbermouth and on our site and on a few different places, people are already throwing in. Wouldn't it be great if they got Jason Newsted in the band? And wouldn't it be great if James Lomenzo came back? And no, I think they should get this So there's already that speculate. And I have to say, my mind for a second did go to, they're going on tour, fairly soon, and they have to be rehearsing and finalizing the new album. Who might play on it? Who might play on the album?
I'm going to go to Blabbermouth right now, okay? And I'm going to look at some comments here, and I'll look for some, some interesting comments. Looking forward for his solo stuff. All right, fair enough. Ellefson, solo stuff, right?
Well, Ellefson did put out a covers album, not too long ago, which, as far as covers albums goes, was quite good, frankly.
Yeah. You know what? I got to say something. I don't like the cheap shots. Towards David Ellefson. He may have done something wrong. I just don't like the ridicule and the cheap shots.
No, I agree. Look, I like the person a lot. Look, and I said this from the get-go. If he's guilty of anything, it's not being very careful, which you can say was kind of stupid. And, and that's advice for anybody, more so someone in the public eye. But, with this world that we live in, where your every move is captured, we all need to protect ourselves, and we all need to be smart, and we all need to assume that someone's watching all the time. So, maybe don't do things that you wouldn't be proud if it got out in the public. I mean, what happens in our bedrooms and behind closed doors is behind closed doors. But once you kind of film it and hit send to somebody, you no longer control it, and so not a wise decision in the world that we live in, because things can be transported around the world. But, cheap shots, I'm sure nobody feels worse about this than David Ellefson. I'm sure he's sorry he's embarrassed himself. I'm sure he's sorry he's embarrassed
his wife
and children.
Right? Yeah.
His ministry. So, it's a sad situation, and I hope people are.
Look, and morally, I don't condone what he did. Don't get me wrong. We just
don't know what he did.
I'm just not a fan of cheap shots. That's all.
Yeah. But I
mean, say what it is. State the facts. That's cool. Say what it is. Say what happened. That's good. If there's a legal aspect to it, great. Say it. But the cheap shots, I don't know. It's just kind of go overboard. I don't know. And I get it. I know it's the internet and things fly fast and people want to make jokes, and I'm all for jokes. but sometimes it goes a little too far, maybe. But maybe that's just me. And to each his own. To each his own, right? What else comments you got there? Queen Bodisha Radiant says, "I cancel culture." That's another tricky one. It's strange because everybody that I meet, they're really not for cancel culture, but it seems that cancel culture is sort of taking over. Someone's doing this. Who's doing this? Who's the leaders of this cancel culture?
Jimmy,
like,
we always
cancel
had cancel. Cancel culture is just a catchy name that we've come up with. This has always existed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Michael Jackson endorses Coke, and Michael Jackson does or doesn't do something. So Coke decides to fire him. The people who agree that Coke fired him are like, yay, I'm going to drink more Coke. The Michael Jackson fans who are standing by him, who don't like that Coke fired him, are like, I'm never drinking Coke again. This has always existed. We've now put it in a nice little package and we call it cancel culture. But accountability and accountability for your accountability exists, right? If a company decides to not do business with somebody anymore, I will either applaud that and support them. But if I think they canceled someone wrongly, I will cancel them. I will hold them accountable for holding that person accountable. So I don't know, like, I think cancel culture has just become like a thing we like to, a saying we like to use, but it's always
I blame
existed.
the media.
Yeah. Well, you're not far off.
The media
right?
I don't listen to. That's the media I don't blame. Not all the media. I like some media. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Eric Victorious is saying, and I think there's a good statement here, if Mustaine used this story as a reason to kick him out instead of dealing with the strained relationship he had with Junior, then he has become a wimp. Well, we'll be sad. So, to your point, was this sort of the last straw? Sort of like there was something else brewing in the background. Could have been anything. And this is kind of like, okay, you're out. That could be something else too. Again, speculation. Complete speculation. I agree with Jimmy. The media is evil and criminal. That's Gary. Thank you very much for agreeing with me. I don't think all media is evil. And I'm going to tell you something, Gary. A lot of people think that today's media is evil. I can tell you for a fact that media has been evil since media began. There has always been companies buying ads for newspapers, and those companies buying those full-page ads, well, they wanted something in return. And we didn't think that something was going on, but something was going on. And a good friend of mine once told me in the media, we put the ads before we used to put the stories. So if you had an ad for cars, then you'd have a story about cars.
Look, media with an agenda is evil.
But there is good media out there, and there are good reporters
media.
out there.
And look, if we're media, I guess we're a form of media, we're doing our best today to stay balanced. If this was just Perrin and Jimmy having a conversation off camera, I might have a very strong opinion, and Jimmy might have a very strong opinion, but we just want to report this very important news that happened today.
Yeah.
And we want to kind of explore both sides of the equation, because to Jimmy's point before, that, it's 50-50. If you look at comments, it's really, I've actually never seen a story where it's not leaning one way or the other. It's 95% of the people are not supporting Mustaine, 95% of the people are not supporting Ellefson. It's really 50-50 in terms of, was this the right thing to do? You know?
Yeah. It's amazing because back in the day, I guess this, would be like an extra, read all about it. It would be a second edition newspaper during the day that, but now on the internet, we digest news so quickly. It's so we consume it so fast.
Tomorrow there could be another ripple. Tomorrow Dave Ellefson could come out with a statement, and then Dave Mustaine could counter that statement. And like this, again, the story is breaking, but it might not be finished unfolding. So there could be twists and turns in the road.
And here's a good point. Queen Bodisha saying, how come virtually all the media is owned by the same companies? It's true. But, if you go back in time, and if you really go back in time, companies always owned, or big, powerful people always own newspapers. Yes, there probably was a time when there was a private guy, on his printing press, but then he needed ads. And then the companies that he would put the ads for, they would have an agenda, and he would have to sort of
Look,
modify
the
his
way of
paper for that
if,
agenda.
if
That's a
something can be
different conversation.
monetized, it will be. So that's the reality is this: if rich, powerful people could figure out how to make a buck off of something, they're going to do it. So yeah, look here in Canada, all the TV stations, radio stations are owned by two mega companies. Two mega corporations own pretty much every radio station and television station in Canada.
You think they're going to let somebody go against what they have to say? No, they're not. I mean, but I guess this is a whole media debate we could have.
Yeah, that's another show, everybody. That's a whole other show.
But just so everybody knows, since the beginning of the printing press, there's always been agendas in some fashion or another, just faster now.
Yeah.
Howling Fang says cancer culture is really just censorship of people that some other people simply don't like. Well, then what's the definition of what are the lines of what are you allowed to censor and what aren't you allowed to censor? So what does censorship really mean at the end of the day, right? Should everything be allowed? Should certain things be allowed? And who decides what should be allowed?
Yeah, again, I'm gonna keep taking exception with cancel culture. Like, it's always existed. Accountability has always existed. There isn't a mysterious bunch of druids in hoods deciding who gets canceled and who doesn't. It's like, action reaction. A person does something, public opinion forms an opinion, and again, it all comes. You talked about sponsors and stuff. What influences everything is, will people buy more or less of our product because of what this person said or did? Because if they think they'll buy as much or more product as what this person did, nothing's going to happen to them. But if someone thinks that they're going to buy less of our product then they're going to get canceled. But that's just basically, if you endorse a product, you didn't do a very good job. People no longer want to buy that product. So you're fired.
And then here's a Lucifer, right? He's married with kids and also a pastor. So there's victims there, and that's probably the victims, the kids and the wife, and I feel bad, and it's not right, and it's not fair, but we don't know what their marriage is like or not. So it's very difficult.
Again, they could have an open marriage. I mean, okay, it doesn't sound very pastoral, but I mean, not society's rules aren't every couple's rules, as an example. But
yeah. And I got oh my God, now we got Jason Newsted is making a lot of gains here. We should get Jason Newsted back to join Megadeth. I would think, and I'm going to throw this out there now, and I don't want to talk about this, but if Megadeth is going to pull this off, right, they're going to need somewhat of a big name, right, to sort of counter this polarization of the fans, to ensure that it's a successful tour. They're not just going to bring nobody in. Hey, I'd like to audition for Megadeth.
I'm not sure. When Dirk and when Kiko came into the band, they weren't household names. They were respected names in metal from Soilwork and from Angra, but they weren't like these big names like Jason Newsted from Metallica would be, right? So they didn't go that route, although there wasn't all this fanfare, So I don't know. Like, the thing is, if you bring in a really big name, if you bring in a Jason Newsted, that person's going to expect to get paid more than a small name. But is Megadeth going to sell more tickets? Will the attendance suddenly go from 14,000 instead of 10,000 because Jason Newsted is the bass player? And I'm not so sure of that. So honestly, Jimmy, I would think they're going to go the same route they went with Kiko and with Dirk, and get an amazingly solid player, great stage presence, energy. If the person is well known, okay. But I just think they're going to try and make the best musical decision possible.
Look, Peter Baltes from Accept. I'm seeing all kinds of names here. I don't know. Throw out some names, everybody. Then I see Geddy Lee.
Look, I've seen some people.
I don't think Geddy Lee's going to do the gig.
I've heard a couple people lobbying for James Lomenzo to come back, and I don't think that would be a bad choice. I really liked James when he was in the band. Everyone knows James is the guy from White Lion, but then he did Black Label Society and he did Megadeth.
Rex Brown. Who's Rex Brown? Do you know Rex Brown?
From Pantera.
Oh, it's from Pantera. Okay. See, I don't really follow Pantera, I guess.
Yeah. Well, out of
I
sight,
didn't
out of
even know he
mind.
was
Right?
available. What? Tom Herrera from Slayer. Tom from Slayer. Oh my God. This look.
Well,
It's gonna have to be. It's not gonna be one of the older guys. It's gonna be one of the sort of like mid-range guys. Geezer Butler. Come on. Everybody's just throwing out names. Geddy Lee is approaching 70. Steve Harris, he's probably what, 60 something.
well, but let's look.
Wolfgang.
It needs to be a thrash bassist, right? Let's be realistic. It needs to be a thrash heavy metal bassist, right? So
I'm seeing Paul McCartney. What do you think? Paul McCartney's in or out? Oh, Ron McGoverney from
yeah, I don't think Ron's played in a long time. Look, I'll give you an interesting name. Greg Christian, who used to be in Testament, has kind of been off to the side for a little while. And so I would think that vein, right? Think of Testament. Think of Exodus.
Gene Simmons makes sense. I like that.
Think of, so would Greg Christian, formerly of Testament, make sense? Would James Lomenzo, who used to be in Megadeth, make sense?
Yeah.
Is there a third Drover brother we don't know about who might like to try? It's like
you could always play bass.
Yeah.
Glenn could always play bass.
Yeah. Good point.
Michael Anthony, do you play bass, Jimmy? Do I slap in the bass? I could play a little bass, but not to the level of.
Well, we'll have to do another
or any other band.
when the bassist is named, we'll have to do a whole other show just to kind of
Nikki Sixx. Yeah, that's not going to work. Nikki Sixx does he even play bass. Nikki Sixx.
You got to be able to play more than one string to be in Megadeth.
That's right. Okay, so. All right, so I think we're going to wrap it up here. Let's wrap it up. So everybody, you can keep leaving your comments if you like once the show's done.
Yeah. And
again, this is not to ridicule or make fun and of a very sort of stressful situation for the band and for David Ellefson. Great guys in Megadeth, good person, David Ellefson. I'm not going to knock the guy, and what he's done is his thing to deal with his family, and I don't want to poke fun at that. And
we saw the passion of all the comments, and we just wanted to give a forum for people to kind of talk about that.
Exactly.
That's what we wanted to do here today.
And I know that this is hard for the Megadeth fans because they want a united Megadeth, not a separated Megadeth. All right.
It's never fun when the parents divorce,
That's right. All right. So next up is the hockey game tonight. What's going on with the hockey game?
Montreal and Toronto playing for the first time in 42 years in the playoffs. Best of 7 series tied 1-1.
Okay.
Game 3 tonight at 7 p.m. Montreal time.
So how's this working now with the pandemic? Once they win, let's say Montreal wins, then what?
Well, there's a Canadian division, so whoever wins this would play the winner of Winnipeg Edmonton, and then the winner of that, then we need to see, because then there'll be 3 American semifinalists. So by that time, will we be able to travel and will fans be able to attend? Or would the Canadian team have to kind of go to the U.S., put themselves in a bubble, and play the American teams and not have any home games? So
is there going to be like a final Stanley Cup of all the NHL teams?
Be a
like a final one?
Like,
or is it just going to be Canada and that's the end of it?
No. Once the Canadian division champion is crowned, there's 3 American divisions, and the 4 division winners will be in the semifinals. So the Stanley Cup will be awarded the way it normally is.
Kind of with this COVID thing, I kind of lost track of what's going on. Not really watching the games. It's kind of just pretending like I'm watching, but I'm not. So,
but the city of Montreal will come to a standstill in about 2 hours.
That's right. All right. So good luck to the Montreal Canadiens or the Toronto Maple Leafs. I have a lot of friends there too. So have yourself a great Sunday, everybody. Bye, Perry.
Right. Thanks, folks.